Hey, welcome to Keight Krafts. I'm Keight. Today I would like to share with you a flat shaker notebook. Let's get started. So to kick things off and to save some time, I have already cut out all the pieces that I'm going to need for today's book. So I'll show you real quick here how I am cutting these guys down with the mini cinch hole puncher here. And I'm just placing everything in between the 4 inches mark. So that way I get even on either side. Now I end up messing this up in the long run. My advice to you is to either use a longer piece of paper and cut it down, or use a bigger full stick post-it note. Because one of them I end up messing up, and this was just leftover paper from a previous notebook that I had made. So I'm just going to line those little post-it notes up in between the 2 4s, and then I'm going to pull it out and realize it's not sturdy enough, so I end up adding another post-it note to the center. Even if you washi taped a bigger piece of paper to this, that might also work too, as long as it was in between the 4 inches mark. So once I've added my holes to that one, I can go ahead and move on to the next one. And through the magic of editing, we have got our second piece here. Now I end up having to cut this out again, but you won't see that till later. So I'm going to take these pieces and they're going to go up at the top, but we're going to wait a minute here. So we'll set that off to the side, and we are going to grab a piece of acetate. But this isn't actually acetate. This is actually a plastic piece from, I believe it was a 12 by 12 paper pad that I'd had, and I ripped the bag so I couldn't fit the paper back in, and I set this aside because I knew I wanted to do a few shaker cards, because I think shaker cards are a lot of fun. So yeah, all I'm doing here is I'm taking a thin piece of double-sided adhesive. I believe this one is bigger than the 1/8 of an inch score tape. So I'm going to add everybody in here so that way I've got it all when I need it. And I'm kind of feeling my way through this one. I wasn't 100% sure how I wanted to go about this, but I knew what I had to do, kind of thing. I just didn't know which sides I needed to close first. So you'll have to forgive me if it seems a little bit slow or obvious and I'm not catching on to the obvious. So I'm thinking here, do I do the top first? Do I do the bottom first? Do I do the sides first? And I decide that I'm going to go with the bottom first. So I'm adding adhesive to the back of my panel. So I'll have 3 sides of this plastic wrapped stuff taped down to the back, and then I'll have one side taped to the front, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to trim off the excess, that way I don't have a lot of bulk behind this paper, and we are going to add our adhesive tape to these sides as well. So I've got the right side here, and then I'll end up putting some on the left side, but first I'm going to peel that off and fold this guy over. Now, I don't want to add too much tension to this because I want to be able to add shaker bits. So I try not to have it too flat, and as you can see there, I ended up going with the top and leaving that side piece open. And then I'm going to go around and I'm going to trim off all of the excess of the plastic because we don't want anything impeding the ability for the front of the notebook to move, if that makes sense too. So you don't want anything sticking. And this is all going to get covered up by that stripy bit, so I'm very, very, very carefully, trying not to cut my holes, I'm trying to trim off the excess plastic. Now, I probably could have cut this smaller initially and worked with what I had, but I wasn't exactly sure how far up I wanted to go with the tape. So, yeah, just keep in mind if you do decide to recreate this that you don't want to cover up those holes. So here we are going to put in our final piece of double-sided tape right along that edge there, but we're not going to pull up the release tape just yet. If you remember in the opening scene there, I had all those shaker elements, and that's what we're going to do. So I've got these iridescent confetti discs from High Supply, and these guys are just like little glittery confetti that's silver, and then we're going to add in some of the black matching confetti into there. And now that I've got all those bits in there, I'm going to take the release tape off, and then I'm going to mash down that edge there, and then we're going to do a little bit of trimming. So you can see that this front panel has shaker bits in it. Now for the fun part, how I want to do this. So I've got this little panel that I've cut out from, I believe this was the Echo Park Party Time, I think, paper pad. It's kind of got almost like a vintagey feel to it. That's why I really liked about it. I'll make sure to leave the names of all this stuff in the links. Links? I think you could still buy it. If I can find a link, I'll leave it for the paper. If not, I'll just leave the name of the paper. But I'll leave this all in the description box below. So what I want to do here is kind of center up that I put a spell on you to my panel. And then I want to mash down that little bit there. I mean, I suppose I could have just glued that on first to the flat shaker panel, but like I said, I was kind of crafting on the fly here while I was recording, and I was quite excited to have another book because I like notebooks. Like I said in the last video, if you've watched or you haven't watched, there is something satisfying about writing, like pen and paper and writing. I often write a lot of notes when I'm doing research, and I don't just type them out on my phone. I've got to write them down. And I've gone through many books writing for research for when I started my YouTube channel and teaching myself about social media and stuff I didn't have growing up. The social media and YouTube is still a mystery to me in some senses, but you learn as you go. You can teach an old dog new tricks. I'm proof. So once I've got everybody glued down, we are going to take my little Stardust pen by Sakura Jelly Roll, sorry. And I'm just going to go over those letters. I thought the letters looked alright by themselves, but I figured if I added in a little bit of glitter, it would give them like a little extra of a magical feel to them. So once I'm all done with adding that little bit of glitter, I'll inspect my handiwork, and you can see it's got a little twinkle to it. And then it is time to assemble everything. So I'm going to add in some more of that double-sided score tape, but first I want to trim off that little extra piece of plastic, just because this is going to be glued down to our sturdy panels. Again, if you haven't watched my first video on how to assemble this, I have a video that I've kind of double timed in speed because it was quite long. And yeah, it just shows you how to put together this notebook. And I've just kind of reiterated what I've done and added a different panel to it because this is kind of fun. So again, I'm just making sure that my plastic on the back is nice and stuck and is not going to move or pop out or pull away unless, of course, you hit it with something sharp, which I don't recommend because then you'll have little shaker bits all over the place. But yeah, so again, I missed out on putting it over top of those holes because I want to make sure that those holes stay free. And you can see here that we have our extra piece. So I will pull off all of the release tape to this, and then we are going to double stick everything with our double-sided tape. So again, with the glue on the one side, that way I have a little bit of wiggle room, and then we'll add in our glue on the panel that is going to be facing on the inside of the book. So I want to make sure that I've got enough glue, and then we are going to flip that over, and we're going to line up our holes, and we are going to make sure everything's lined up and mash everything down. And there's our front panel. So next up, after I'm done shaking this, we are going to put a brick on it for right now, and then we are going to work on the back panel. And the back panel will be the same method, except we aren't going to have the shaker bit element to it. So I just looking there and I noticed that I messed up on the cutting. So I had this extra piece of bigger paper that I kind of wanted to save, but it is what it is. So I've gone ahead and cut out my holes, and I made sure to line the one side up at the 4-inch mark, and then that way all I've got to do is cut this down to 4 inches on my guillotine trimmer. And once I've cut that down, we can go ahead and add our glue. You don't have to add this bit in on the back. I just like how it kind of finished the book itself. Again, you could do whatever kind of front covers you want. I was just having a play around with this, and I really liked the last video I did with the window shaker, and I thought, we could probably try a flat shaker, and that would be fun. So again, with the double stick, on the double stick for the back side of the notepad, we are going to glue everybody together, give it a good mash, and make sure everything is down nice and tight, and everything's smooth, and now all we have to do is assemble. So I've already cut the panels that I will need for this notebook. Again, we'll line up the front as if we're looking at the front of the book. And then just to help me out, I will put this like the book is already assembled, and then I'll just flip over that back panel so that way the bulky bits can be in the back of the book. So I'll give that a good press down, inspect my handiwork, and then we'll flip that back over. And here you have it, folks. I put a spell on you. Now I'm going to be singing that song for the rest of the night. So if you've watched the other 2 videos, out of the 3, which one is your favorite? I'd like to know in the comment section below. So, if you've enjoyed today's program, you know what to do. And as always, thanks for hanging out with me today. Take care.